I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act.
For years after the death of Jeffrey Epstein in 2019, many people felt his case would slowly fade from daily headlines. Now, with sealed files being reviewed, the investigation has been reopened and attention is rising again. In the middle of this renewed spotlight, Katt Williams leaks celebs who will go to jail when Epstein's files are completely reviewed. So, are these claims based on real legal risk or growing public pressure? And who could truly face consequences if more evidence appears? Stay with us as we explore the documents, the reactions, and the growing pressure for accountability. The unexpected reopening of Jeffrey Epstein's files. After the death of Jeffrey Epstein in 2019, many people believed the full truth would never come out. There would be no trial. There would be no public testimony. There would be no courtroom where powerful associates could be questioned under oath. For a time, it felt like the case would slowly fade from headlines. But that did not happen. Over the next few years, judges ordered the release of certain sealed records connected to lawsuits involving Epstein and his longtime associate Ghislaine Maxwell. These records became known in the media as the Epstein Files. They were not one single document. They were a collection of court materials gathered over many years. The files included depositions. These are sworn statements given under oath before trial. They included flight logs from Epstein's private jet. They contained pages from his contact book. There were emails and scheduling records. Some documents listed names of people mentioned during testimony. Others showed who traveled on flights or attended meetings. When these materials became public, social media reacted instantly. News outlets began scanning the pages for recognizable names. Within hours, headlines were everywhere. Some people felt shocked. Others felt anger. Many felt confused. It is important to explain something clearly. Being named in a deposition or appearing in a flight log does not mean someone committed a crime. Many individuals listed in the records were not accused of wrongdoing. Some were simply contacts. Some attended social events. Some traveled on the aircraft for business or charitable purposes. Several well-known figures were mentioned in various documents over time. Former United States President Bill Clinton appeared in flight logs multiple times during the early 2000s. Clinton has stated he traveled on Epstein's plane for humanitarian work related to global health initiatives. He has denied any knowledge of criminal activity and has denied visiting Epstein's private island. Prince Andrew, a member of the British royal family, was also connected through testimony. One accuser, Virginia Giuffre, alleged that she was trafficked to him when she was underage. Prince Andrew denied the allegations. In 2022, he reached a financial settlement in a civil lawsuit without admitting wrongdoing. Business leader Bill Gates met with Epstein several times after Epstein's first conviction. Gates later described those meetings as a mistake and said he regretted the association. He has denied any involvement in illegal behavior. Actor Kevin Spacey appeared in flight logs connected to a humanitarian trip to Africa. He has denied wrongdoing related to Epstein. Comedian Chris Tucker was also listed on a flight tied to that same trip. He has stated that his travel was for charitable work and that he had no knowledge of Epstein's crimes. Supermodel Naomi Campbell's name appeared in scheduling documents and contact lists. She has said that when she learned of Epstein's crimes, she was disturbed and that she supports victims. These examples show the range of reactions. Some offered statements of regret. Some emphasized limited contact. Some denied any serious connection. Fans quickly defended their favorites. Many argued that one flight does not prove involvement. Others insisted that networking among elites is common and does not equal crime. At the same time, critics questioned why so many powerful people had close access to a man who had already pleaded guilty to crimes involving 2008. They asked how someone with that history continued to move within elite circles for over a decade. Media framing also played a major role. Some names dominated headlines for days. Others were mentioned briefly and then faded from discussion. Coverage often focused on the most famous individuals, even if their documented contact was limited. Meanwhile, lesser-known figures received less attention, even if their ties appeared more frequent. The release of these files did not produce a wave of immediate arrests. Instead, they created a wave of public panic and debate. Social media platforms became investigative spaces where users analyzed flight dates, cross-checked event photos, and compared timelines. Old party pictures resurfaced. Archived interviews were reposted, body language clips were replayed. The deeper issue was trust. People began asking whether wealth and influence had protected Epstein's circle for too long. They questioned whether justice operates differently for powerful individuals. They wondered if more sealed material still existed that had not yet been made public. But if some celebrities insist they barely knew Epstein, why do old interviews, party footage, and resurfaced clips tell a much more complicated story? Hollywood, power circles, and damage control. When names from the Epstein files entered public conversation, the response from celebrities followed a familiar pattern. Crisis management began almost immediately. Public relations teams prepared statements. Lawyers advised clients. Carefully worded explanations appeared in interviews and press releases. One common response was to minimize contact. Several public figures emphasized that they met Epstein only briefly. They described limited interactions at social gatherings. The message was clear. Association did not mean friendship. Another frequent approach was to separate themselves from the most controversial details. Some individuals stressed that they never visited Epstein's private island in the United States Virgin Islands. Others highlighted that they were unaware of his criminal behavior at the time they met him. Former President Bill Clinton stated that he had not visited the island and that his flights were connected to humanitarian work. Kevin Spacey and Chris Tucker both linked their travel to charitable missions to Africa during the early 2000s. They denied knowledge of any criminal activity. Business leader Bill Gates publicly acknowledged meeting Epstein after his 2008 conviction. He described those meetings as mistakes and expressed regret. His statements focused on poor judgment rather than criminal involvement. Prince Andrew's case became more serious because it involved direct allegations. His televised interview in 2019 drew intense scrutiny. Viewers analyzed his tone, posture, and explanations. Critics pointed to moments of hesitation and defensive answers. Supporters argued that he maintained his innocence. In 2022, he settled a civil case without admitting wrongdoing. The settlement did not end public debate. Public image protection often depends on strategy. Celebrities rely on public relations experts who understand media cycles. When controversy breaks, the goal is to respond quickly, limit exposure, and shift attention. Sometimes silence is advised. Other times, a carefully managed interview is arranged to present a composed appearance. But who was the person that exposed these names beforehand? When jokes stop sounding like jokes. What happens when a comedian says certain names out loud, and years later those same names appear inside official court documents? At first, it sounds like entertainment. It feels bold, dramatic, and exaggerated. But when legal records begin to surface and people recognize those names, the tone changes. The laughter becomes quiet. The clips begin to circulate again, and the questions grow louder. Katt Williams has long built a reputation for challenging powerful systems. He is known for criticizing Hollywood culture, music executives, and the way fame is controlled behind the scenes. Over time, he developed an image as someone who does not fear backlash. He often suggested that some celebrities were protected by invisible forces within the entertainment industry. He also made it clear that he was willing to say things others would avoid. For years, many people dismissed his comments. They saw them as dramatic talk, meant to spark attention. That is common in comedy. Audiences expect exaggeration. They expect shock value. So when Katt mentioned powerful names or hinted at hidden behavior, most viewers treated it as performance. It was easy to move on. Then something changed. Court documents connected to Jeffrey Epstein began to be unsealed. These were not rumors from social media. They were official records from lawsuits and investigations. They included flight logs, contact lists, emails, and sworn testimony. Some of the names that appeared in these documents were people the public recognized. Some were political leaders. Some were business figures. Some were celebrities. Suddenly, old interviews resurfaced online. Clips from past podcasts and stage appearances were reposted and shared widely. People began comparing what Katt had said before with what was now appearing in legal files. The mood shifted from amusement to curiosity. Viewers began asking whether he had been observing patterns rather than inventing stories. If Katt was simply joking, why did the release of government documents suddenly make those jokes feel uncomfortable? And to understand that, we have to go back to the man at the center of it all, Jeffrey Epstein. The rise and fall of Jeffrey Epstein. To understand why so many questions remain today, it is necessary to examine the life of Jeffrey Epstein. His story did not begin with scandal. It began quietly, with education and ambition. Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York. After college, he briefly worked as a teacher at a private school in Manhattan. He did not have advanced academic credentials in finance, yet he later moved into the world of high-level money management. He joined an investment bank and eventually began managing wealth for extremely rich clients. Over time, he presented himself as a financial expert who specialized in handling money for billionaires. As his wealth grew, so did his social network. Epstein developed relationships with politicians, royalty, academics, business leaders, and celebrities. He attended high-profile events. He donated money to universities and scientific research. He positioned himself as a connector between powerful people. His homes in New York, Florida, New Mexico, and the United States Virgin Islands became gathering places for elite guests. However, behind this polished image, allegations were building. In the early 2000s, reports began to surface in Florida that Epstein had been involved in mistreatment of underage girls. Local police investigated. The case attracted federal attention. In 2008, Epstein reached a controversial plea deal with federal prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to state charges related to soliciting prostitution from a minor. In exchange, he avoided more serious federal charges. The agreement allowed him to serve a short sentence in a county jail. He was given work release privileges that permitted him to leave jail for long periods during the day. Many legal experts later criticized the deal. Victims said they were not properly informed. The case became an example of how wealth and influence can affect the justice system. After completing his sentence, Epstein returned to public life. Despite being a registered molester, he continued to meet with influential figures. He traveled frequently on his private jet. That aircraft later became widely known by a nickname linked to the allegations. He also owned a private island in the United States Virgin Islands. Authorities later described that island as a central location in his trafficking operation. For years, questions lingered about how someone with a molester conviction could still move within elite circles. Some associates distanced themselves. Others continued contact. The full scope of his activities remained hidden from the broader public. Everything shifted again in 2019. Federal prosecutors in New York arrested Epstein on charges of trafficking of minors. The indictment described a pattern of mistreatment involving underage girls in multiple states. This time, there was no quiet plea agreement. The arrest drew national and international attention. Public reaction was intense. Many people were shocked that he had been allowed to avoid serious federal charges years earlier. Media outlets began investigating his network more aggressively. Victims spoke out. Lawsuits expanded. The focus turned not only to Epstein, but also to anyone who had close ties to him. Then, in August of that same year, Epstein was found dead in his jail cell while awaiting trial. The official ruling determined that his death was self-inflicted. However, the circumstances immediately raised concern. Reports indicated that security cameras near his cell malfunctioned. Guards assigned to monitor him were said to have fallen asleep and failed to perform required checks. Earlier, he had reportedly been placed on watch and then removed from it. These failures created widespread skepticism. Many members of the public questioned how such a high-profile inmate could pass away without proper supervision. Conspiracy theories spread quickly. The lack of a trial meant that detailed evidence would never be presented in open court. There would be no cross-examination. There would be no public testimony revealing the full list of associates under oath. His death changed the direction of the entire case. Instead of a courtroom battle, the focus shifted to documents. Civil lawsuits continued. Victims sought accountability. Judges began unsealing certain records connected to previous cases. Each document release fueled new headlines. But what if this is not just about individual celebrities? What if it is about a system that protects certain people while sacrificing others? Government reinvestigation and the pressure to reveal more. After Jeffrey Epstein's death in 2019, many people believed the legal process had ended. There would be no trial against him. There would be no courtroom testimony where evidence would be examined in full public view. But instead of closing the case, his death created a new wave of pressure. Across the United States and in other countries, victims continued filing civil lawsuits. These lawsuits did not disappear when Epstein passed away. Many were directed at his estate. Others targeted associates who were accused of helping him recruit or transport underage girls. Each lawsuit created new legal filings. Each filing added more records to the public conversation. Public demand for transparency did not fade. In fact, it intensified. People wanted to know how Epstein built such a powerful network. They wanted to understand how he funded his lifestyle. Questions grew louder about who visited his private island in the United States Virgin Islands. Many also wanted to know who benefited financially from business deals connected to him. Judges began reviewing sealed documents connected to earlier cases, including lawsuits involving Ghislaine Maxwell. Some of these documents had remained hidden for years. As courts revisited them, portions were unsealed and released. Each new release triggered fresh headlines. Political pressure also increased. Members of Congress from both major political parties publicly called for greater transparency. Lawmakers asked federal agencies to explain how Epstein was able to secure a controversial plea deal in 2008. There were hearings focused on the failures inside the federal prison system after his death. The Department of Justice conducted internal reviews into how he was monitored while in custody. Investigative journalists played a major role during this period. Reporters reviewed flight logs, court transcripts, and financial records. They interviewed victims, former employees, and legal experts. News organizations spent months examining how Epstein's wealth was structured. Some reports questioned whether he managed money for powerful clients or used his connections to build influence in other ways. One central question involved funding. Epstein lived in luxury. He owned large properties in New York, Florida, New Mexico, and the Caribbean. He maintained a private jet and a staff of employees. Yet many financial experts noted that his wealth structure was not always clear. Some of his financial operations were private. That raised questions about who supported him and how his investments were managed. Another key question involved access. Flight logs showed various high-profile individuals traveled on his aircraft at different times. Visitors were recorded at his Manhattan residence and at his island property. While many of these individuals have denied knowledge of criminal conduct, the pattern of elite networking became impossible to ignore. Legal experts have explained that reopening cases is not simple. Criminal charges require strong evidence. Prosecutors must meet high legal standards before filing indictments. Witness testimony must be credible. Physical evidence must be verified. In some cases, statutes of limitation limit how long prosecutors have to bring charges. However, in certain trafficking cases, laws allow extended timeframes, especially when minors are involved. Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction in 2021 demonstrated that prosecutions connected to Epstein's network were still possible. She was found guilty on federal charges related to trafficking of minors and was later sentenced to a lengthy prison term. Her conviction reinforced the idea that legal consequences had not fully ended with Epstein's death. Some legal analysts believe additional names could surface as civil lawsuits continue. Others caution that appearing in documents does not automatically lead to criminal charges. The gap between association and prosecution remains significant. Still, the pressure has not disappeared. If more documents are still sealed, then who exactly is waiting in fear, and who is confident they will never be touched? Katt Williams, whistleblower or provocateur. In the middle of this legal storm, one unexpected voice gained renewed attention. That voice belonged to comedian Katt Williams. He is not a prosecutor. He is not an investigative reporter. Yet his past statements began circulating again as Epstein-related documents were released. Comedians often operate in a unique space. They can say things that journalists cannot always say directly. Comedy allows exaggeration, satire, and bold commentary. Audiences expect humor, but sometimes humor contains sharp criticism. Throughout his career, Katt Williams has openly criticized the entertainment industry. He has spoken about power structures, gatekeeping, and the idea that certain figures are protected from consequences. On several major podcast appearances, he suggested that some celebrities were shielded by powerful networks. He implied that he was willing to speak about people others avoided. His tone was confident and confrontational. When legal documents later surfaced with familiar names, some viewers connected his earlier comments to the unfolding events. Public reaction divided quickly. Supporters described him as courageous. They argued that he had been pointing out uncomfortable truths long before the public took them seriously. Critics viewed his remarks as reckless. They said that naming people without evidence could spread suspicion unfairly. It is important to approach this carefully. Katt Williams has not presented himself as a source of legal evidence. He has expressed opinions and observations. He has framed his comments as commentary on industry culture rather than formal accusations. The distinction matters. A central question remains. Did he have insider knowledge, Or was he observing patterns that were already visible to those paying attention? If you enjoyed this video, like and subscribe, and also click the next video shown on your screen.